Right, hi everyone. This video is for Edexcel A-level business, and then we're going to look at all of the calculations you might see in theme 1. So this would be useful if you're doing an AS paper on paper 1, or if you're doing paper 1 or paper 3 potentially for the A-level. So in this video we're going to look at these different calculations. I'll go through these more in a bit. Obviously I'm going to go through each one. I'm going to talk about what they mean, what the formulas that you need are. I'll talk you through like a general example, and then I'll show you a past exam question. You might be looking at this and thinking, market pricing, I've not seen that. Yeah, we haven't seen it actually on the A-level specification. It's only been seen so far as a calculation on the international A-level. But, you know, it's in there somewhere, and so it's worth just going through, even if it's a pretty straightforward one, even if you've never seen it before. So let's go through a bit of an introduction as to what to expect from this video and how to use it effectively, and then we'll get straight into the different calculations. So calculation basics. Paper 1 and paper 2 look like this. So I'm just going to remove myself so I'm not in the way of the text that comes up at the bottom. Paper 1 and paper 2 have two sections, each worth 50 marks, and there's 2 4-markers in each section. In paper 1 or 2, the calculation question is going to be a 4-mark question. The reason I specify this is because it's different in paper 3, and you need to be aware of this before thinking about any of the calculations, whether you're looking at a paper 1, paper 2, or paper 3. Paper 3, instead of the 4 markers, has an 8-marker, and in paper 3, it could be, well, it will be, that calculations might be used as part of an essay question. So you don't just need to know how to calculate, you need to know what the calculations actually mean. So hopefully I'll talk through those a little bit as we go through. So how do you get some practice calculation questions? My advice would be go into the description, have a look at this exam question grid. I'm going to put this in the description so you can view it. If you go on there and you look for a particular topic, so for example we're going to do supply and demand curves later on in this video. If you look at the demand section, you can see all of the past exam questions that have come up on this topic in previous years, including AS papers and A2 papers, just for a bit of extra variety of practice. So each of the sections we're going to go through has an example question. It's taken from this grid, so you can go through and have a look at these. Obviously, if it's a paper 1 or 2, it's going to be a 4-marker, but if it's a paper 3 and that's in the second column, you could potentially see like an essay question on this as well. So for example there, if you look halfway down, you've got an A2-3, paper 3 question 2020, which says, using a supply and demand diagram, assess 2 reasons why live entertainment business revenues in the UK might have increased in 2017. That question requires you to draw a diagram and talk about it. So you would talk about whether it's an increase in supply or demand or a decrease in supply and demand. So when we go through these, I'll talk about about what I would expect you to do in this video. So we'll start with market share. So we're going to look at a calculation, we're going to look at the meaning of the calculation, and we're going to look at an example, like a general example that I'm just going to put together. Then I'm going to show you a practice exam question. So my advice would be, pause it when you get up to the practice exam question, and then give it a try, and then unpause it and see if your answer is correct. So the calculation for market share is the business sales divided by the total market sales times by 100. It's a percentage. The meaning is that it's the percentage of the total market sales that is earned by one business. So for example, if a business has £3.2 million in sales and the total market generates £32 million in sales, their market share would be 3.2 million over 32 million times by 100 is 10%. So I gave you some pretty easy numbers there for that one. So we've got a practice exam question here. Using the data in extract D, and a calculation question will always say using the data in, etc. To prompt you to basically know that you need to use the data and do a calculation. Calculate Nike's market share of the worldwide sports footwear in 2018. State your answer at 2 decimal places. You're advised to show you're working out. So pause this, have a look at that case study on the left-hand side, give this question a try, and then press play when you're ready to have a look at the answer. So for this one, this is the bit of information we need. We are looking at 2018, so we're looking at the white columns, and then what's really important is we don't miss that little bit at the bottom, where it says sales value of all other sports footwear brands, not included in the chart, 16.7 billion. One of the most common mistakes with this question was students didn't see that last bit. So for this one, we know that Nike sales are 22.3 billion. That's the first part of that graph, the line graph there. Sorry, the bar chart, I should say. I know my different types of chart. We need the Nike bit. We also need the total. So we're going to do the total from Nike, which is 22.3. The 14.6 from Adidas, the 2.9 from Asics, the 2.5 from Puma, the 1.1 from Under Armour, and the 16.7 from the others. That's going to give us a total of 60.1 billion. And then we do the calculation we talked about earlier. So 22.3 divided by 60.1 times by 100 is 37.1%. So that would get you 4 marks. Okay? That's kind of the gist of how this video is going to go. Hopefully that's pretty easy to follow. So market growth. Calculation is change over original times by 100. I guess I've had to go with a general one there just because this can be applied in so many different ways. So it is effectively about how much the market size has grown or decreased. Usually these markets are growing. So an example here would be if the market is worth 4.6 billion in 2023 and 5.3 billion in 2024, calculate the market growth. So we would look for the change, which is the difference between the two. So the difference is 0.7 billion. And then when we do the change over the original, it was worth 4.6, so that's the original. 0.7 over 4.6 times by 100 is an increase in of 15.22%. So again, we've got an example question here. This one is about the sportswear market. So percentage market growth for sportswear from 2019 to 2022. You're advised to show your work in. So again, pause this, give this one a try, and then press resume when you're ready. So for this one, we need this piece of the case study. So it's not in, it tells you which extract, but it doesn't tell you which bit. Obviously, we're looking for the growth. The sportswear sector is predicted to grow from 5.3 billion in 2019 to 6.7 in 2022. So 2019 was 5.3, 2022 was 6.7. So the change is going to be 1.4. So 1.4 over the original, which was 5.3, times by 100 gives us 26.42%. So that's our 4 marks. Right, a market map. This is our first example of a construct question, which is to say that it's not a calculation, you've got to draw something. So I've chucked this one in because we've seen this before. I think we've only seen it once, but it's come up once, so we need to be prepared that it could potentially come up again. So a market map is a chart showing how a business or product is positioned within their market. So if we look at like the market map for UK supermarkets, we would split this by different criteria. Usually we'd go like high price, low price, high quality, low quality. And generally, now the key thing here, right, is this is subjective, so it's really easy to get marks. You just need to put some data on there. It is subjective, so whether you think something's high price or low price is kind of irrelevant to, what the examiner thinks is kind of irrelevant because they've got to give you credit for what you think, as long as you're not completely off base. So if we're thinking supermarkets, I would be saying that like Waitrose and Marks & Spencer's are high price, high quality. Aldi and Lidl are low price, low quality. You probably could add Iceland to there as well. And then the others are kind of in the middle of the market, right? Sainsbury's, Tesco, Morrison's and Asda, they're kind of like, they're not high quality, they're not low quality, they're not high price, they're not low price. So the idea is like, you get your marks from labeling your axis, labeling your kind of like spectrums there, and then putting businesses on there. So this is a question we've seen. It might have been an AS question, but we've seen it nonetheless. I'm just going to remove myself. In fact, I'm just going to switch myself over to the other side so that I'm not in the way because I got the technology to do this apparently. We have got a market map to illustrate the impact of Marks & Spencer's decision to aim its clothing range at a younger target market. So Marks & Spencer's have plans to revive their brand. There's a few things they've said in here. Have a go at this one first and then unpause and we'll go for it. So it says they need to attract a younger set of customers, the top end of their demographic, like next demographic of 25 to 45. There's an interesting bit there because they've mentioned a competitor. We're going to put that on the map just to start off, get some extra application. And they've also acknowledged that some of their clothing needs to be more competitively priced. So there's a mention of young and old, so I've put that on there. And there's a mention of price, so I've put high price and low price. You could have gone high quality, low quality. Again, the key thing is that you just kind of like balance this out and you've put things in the right place. So you'll get some marks for your high price, low price, old, young. I've gone with older, young. Your other marks will come from placing businesses. Now, obviously, you need to place Marks & Spencer's, but I would also be placing other businesses in the market. They tell you about Next, so I would be using Next. So I've put like maybe Marks & Spencer's and Next at a similar kind of place. I think Marks & Spencer's a little bit older, so I've moved it a little bit closer towards older. But the key thing is they're trying to position themselves younger, so I've put it in that younger section. And then just as another example, I've put Primark in there, where if you look at like lower price but younger, you could put Primark in there. It just means that we've got our application, okay? So that will get you 4 marks. Right, supply and demand diagrams. So supply and demand diagrams are the other construct question. I'm going to put these both together. So the meaning of a supply and demand diagram, let's define supply and demand. Demand is the quantity of a product that a consumer is willing or able to purchase. Supply is the quantity of a product that a business is willing or able to sell. And we're going to look at 4 examples here. I am going to remove myself to get out of the way. So we're going to look at 2 shifts in demand and 2 shifts in supply because they could increase or decrease. So let's start with a shift in demand. We've got price and quantity. We're going to label our axis price and quantity. That actually gets you one of the marks, but I'm going to talk about that in a bit more depth when we look at the practice exam question. Supply points to the sky, demand points down. The idea, of course, simple, is that when the price is higher, the business is more willing to supply a higher quantity because they're going to make more profit on that sale. If the price is higher, though, demand will be lower because consumers don't want to pay the high prices. When prices are lower, demand is at its highest because consumers will buy more and be able to buy more when the price is low. But businesses won't be as interested in supplying this because they aren't going to make as much profit. So in this situation, if it's a shift in demand, usually it's because it's something that impacts on consumers. Then what we would see is we'd see a right shift in demand. So the demand curve just shifts over. We put a D1. We would draw equilibrium on here as well. I'm going to touch on that when we do the example. I haven't done it for all of these just because they're quite small and it would clog it a little bit. If we were seeing a decrease in demand, we would see a left shift. For a supply, it's going to be the supply line that shifts. So if it's an increase in supply, this would usually be because production costs have got cheaper or it's become easier to produce the product. We would see a right shift in supply and then obviously left shift in supply as well. So the key point here is really that the only 2 decisions you've got to make are, is it supply or demand that's shifting? And is it increasing, in which case it's going to the right, or is it decreasing, in which case it's going to the left? So with this one, we've got draw supply and demand diagram to show the possible impact of the change in the price of gold between the 6th of December and the 5th of January. That covers the entire chart. It doesn't always. Sometimes they might target a specific part of it. But what we can see, generally speaking here, is the price of gold has increased, right? So we're going to label our diagram price and quantity. That's going to get you one of the marks. We're going to draw supply and demand curves. That's going to get us another one of the marks. Now, bear in mind, 2 out of 4 marks is a C grade. And you haven't actually done anything yet. You've just drawn 4 lines and written 4 letters. So you shouldn't get less than 2. If you do this, you'll get 2 marks, even if you don't bother attempting the question. Now for this one, what we're seeing is we are seeing that there is an increase in the cost of gold. An increase in the cost of gold affects the production cost for the business. It says there gold is one of the raw materials used in the manufacture of luxury watches. If it's increasing the cost, it's going to decrease supply. So we are going to see a left shift in supply. And then this is the bit I didn't have in my previous examples because they were small, but I'm going to put it in here. That's the 3rd mark, the shift in supply, being correctly labelled. The 4th mark is going to come from recognizing the equilibrium points where supply and demand meet. So the first one is going to be P and Q. The second, because we've got our S1 line, is going to be P1 and Q1. So that gets you the 4 marks, basically. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Right, price elasticity of demand. I think price and income elasticity of demand are probably the 2 hardest in theme 1. The price elasticity demand calculation is price elasticity demand is percentage change in quantity over percentage change in price. If you're looking for an interesting way of remembering this, we always talk about this in class about how to remember which way around it is. You always Q before you P, right? And so it's just a helpful way of knowing the order of those 2. We're going to potentially have to rearrange this. We'll look at some examples of that. So if we're going to rearrange it, we'd need to use this triangle. So we put the same equation as this triangle. I'm sure you're familiar with this from like GCSE maths and stuff like that. But what it effectively means is you can cover different parts of it. So if we're trying to work out percentage change in quantity, we would do price elasticity demand times by percentage change in price. If we're trying to work out percentage change in price, we would do quantity demand over price elasticity demand. And if we're trying to work out price elasticity demand, we obviously know we do quantity over price. The meaning behind this is it's how much the demand of a product changes when the price changes. The more elastic, the more demand changes. If it's inelastic, demand doesn't change by that much. So if I'll get rid of myself here again, if product A's sales have increased from 40,000 to 42,000 after they reduced their price from £12 to £10, calculate their price elasticity demand. Price elasticity demand is that formula. We have not been given our percentage change in quantity or percentage change in price. We're going to have to work this out. So percentage change in quantity is going to be an increase of 2,000. So change over original times 100, our percentage change calculation. So 2,000 over 40,000 times by 100 is 5%, an increase in 5%. The price has decreased by £2 and it was originally £12. So minus 2 over 12 times by 100 is minus 16.67. And then if we put that into that equation, 5 over minus 16.67 is minus 0.3. So that price elasticity demand is minus 0.3. that I'm not going to go through too much depth about like what that means, elastic or inelastic. There's review videos on this. I'm just focused on the calculation kind of structure here. But ultimately, that is an inelastic price elasticity demand. It means that when the price changes, demand doesn't change that much, basically. It changes. For every 1% you change your price, demand only shifts by 0.3%. For the other one, I'm going to show you like a rearranged version. We've been given price elasticity demand. Product B has a PED of minus 0.7. If they increase their price by 3.5, what will their quantity demanded be? So looking at that triangle, we know that to calculate percentage change in quantity, which is what we're looking for, we need to do price elasticity demand times by percentage change in price. So that is minus 0.7 times by 3.5 gives us minus 2.45. Your answer should always be a negative for price elasticity demand because there's always a negative correlation. Price goes up, demand goes down. Price goes down, demand goes up. Okay, so let's have a look at an example. So this one says, calculate the difference in price elasticity demand for PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. State your answer at 2 decimal places. You're advised to show your work in. So give this a try and then press play when you're ready to have a look at it. So we know our calculation is percentage change in quantity over percentage change in price. In fact, in this situation, they've given us both of those pieces of information. Definitely worth looking at other examples of this kind of question because there's loads of different ways they can ask this and there's loads of different ways they can rearrange the question. This one, the complication, like they're not just going to ask you to calculate it once. They're going to make a complication. Maybe that's you have to work out the percentage change in quantity or percentage change in price like we did in those examples. In this situation, you've got to work it out twice and then compare the difference. So PlayStation 2 is going to be quantity over price, so minus 2.10 over 0.59, that's minus 3.65, sorry, 3.56. Xbox is minus 4.47 over 1.47, so that is minus 3.4. So we need to know the difference between the two. So minus 3.56 minus 3.04 is minus 0.52. To be honest, I actually checked the mark scheme on this one. If you put 0.52 difference, you'd get the full marks as well. So it doesn't super matter. It doesn't seem to super matter if you've got your minuses on that bit. But just, use the answers as you've got the answers. So hopefully that one's pretty straightforward, but definitely look at past exam question papers for that. I mentioned how you can do that with the question grid. So for income elasticity demand, the calculation is exactly the same. I know Q before U Y isn't like a thing. You just swap the P for a Y basically. The triangle's the same as well. It's just you swap the P for a Y, and the meaning is the same. But instead of it being how much price changes, it's about how much income levels change. So how much the demand of a product changes when income levels change. There's a key difference between income elasticity demand and price elasticity demand, and that we said price elasticity demand was a negative correlation always. So when price goes up, demand goes down. When price goes down, demand goes up. For income elasticity demand, it actually depends on the product. So for example, like certain items, when incomes go up, you'll see more purchases of that. So like a luxury good, for example. But an inferior good, when incomes go up, you'd actually see a decrease in sales because consumers will move on to maybe a more luxurious or more normal goods. So this one doesn't necessarily have to be negative all the time. So here's an example. Product A's sales decrease from 300,000 to 290,000 after average incomes dropped by 3%. So average incomes have dropped and demand has dropped. So income is quantity over income. And the quantity is dropped by 10,000, so that is a percentage change of minus 3.33. We've been given incomes drop of 3%, so it's going to be minus 3.33 over minus 3 gives us a positive income elasticity demand of 1.11. So that would make this a luxury product because it's above 1. Product B has an income elasticity demand of minus 0.7. If incomes increase by 2%, what will their quantity demanded changed be? So because income elasticity demand is negative, that means there's a negative correlation. So our quantity demanded should decrease. But let's check that out. So quantity demand is YED times by percentage change in income. So that's going to be minus 0.7 times by 2 is minus 1.4. Probably don't even need a calculator for that one. So hopefully you can see those different examples. So let's have a look at one from an exam. So this is calculate the income elasticity demand for takeaway meals. You're advised to show your work in. So we've got the average number of takeaway meals consumed per person per year was 140, is now 144. Median annual income has also gone from 27,000 to 27,195. So quantity, we're going to have to work these two out. This is one where we only have to do it once, but we have to work it out. So different to our price elasticity example. The quantity has increased by 4 over 140 original times by 100 is an increase of 2.86%. Incomes have increased as well. by £195. So that's an increase of 0.72%. So if we put that into the formula, 2.86 divided by 0.72 gives us a income elasticity demand of 3.97. So these are luxury products. This makes sense, right? When you've got more money, you buy more takeaways. Pretty self-explanatory. And actually, you don't need to increase your income by that much to spend more on takeaways. Apparently, proportionately, that's the way it works. Right, this is the last one. This hasn't come up on the A level. I'm recording this in 2025, so this course has been running for 10 years. We've had 8 sets of exams, or we're about to have the 8th set of exams. So we've had 7, I think. We've never seen this on an AS or an A level paper. However, it has come up in an international A level paper. So I'm going to use that as our example, and it's just worth going through, just in case, I guess. Like, I don't expect it would come up, but I can't rule that out. I don't write the exams, so I just want to make sure we've covered our bases. It's really straightforward. Markup pricing, it's the profit per item divided by the cost per item. And it's basically what percentage of the cost per item is made as a profit per item. So that'll make more sense when we do the example. So if a product costs £5 to make and sells for £10, what's the markup? So the profit per item is the selling price minus the cost. So 10 minus 5 is £5. And then we just do profit per item divided by cost per item. So £5 profit per item divided by the cost is 100%. So basically there's a 100% markup. You've taken 100% of the cost and you've added it on top to sell the price at £10. So this is the international business example we've seen, right? And it is calculated 2 decimal places, the markup on an Impossible Foods burger. So we've got 2 burgers here. It talks about the different kind of like costs involved and what have you. At the bottom you've got cost per burger and the average selling price. And you've got this for the beef burger and then the Impossible Foods burger. So give this one a try and then have a look at it. So we need this bit, the Impossible Foods burger section. We've got the cost per burger and the selling price, so we can work out the profit per burger. The selling price is $9.99 minus $3.64, gives us a profit per burger of $6.35. So we do profit per unit over the cost, so $6.35 over $3.65 times by 100 is 174.45%. So that's the markup. They've basically added 175.45% of the cost on top to get to the selling price. Right, that's them all done. So hopefully that was useful. I would, as I've mentioned, have a look at the exam question grid that's in the comments. I'll also link the Theme 1 playlist of recaps, just in case you want a bit more depth on some of the definitions and the meanings behind these. They'll be covered in a bit more depth in there, but hopefully for the calculations, this will be useful. I'm obviously at the time of recording, I'm yet to do the Themes 4 and the Themes 2 and 3 ones, but hopefully, depending on when you're watching this, they'll be available as well. If they're not available right now, they are coming, okay? If you've got any questions, chuck them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. See you later.